make sure, obviously, everyone stays tuned to the podcast that drops tomorrow. But welcome, and we encourage you to be interactive here. Ask questions. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right. Don't be afraid to get in our faces during the live stream here. Right, guys, let's jump into it. Let's talk about esports and gaming.
What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry.
The live stream's getting bigger!
I know.
Make sure you go buy William's book, The Book of Esports, which it's killing it on Amazon as always. I think everyone has it by now, but if you don't, go buy it. And even if you do, maybe go buy a second copy, you know.
Nothing says I love my mom and dad like the Book of Esports.
And on the after show, we cover all the stuff that just didn't make it into the podcast. It's still just as good. It's just as interesting. It's maybe even better because we get to interact with you guys.
Ghost Runner, I managed to fit that in with about the busiest week of work I've ever had. So anytime
priorities, right?
It's an anti-William is late device.
That's very effective.
Don't count on it though.
Risky. Hot garbage. It's an indicator of bad money management. It's an indicator of immature management.
I have some hot takes.
For the vast majority of people who game, and look, if you look at just the gaming market, the dollar in revenue, the $137 billion global gaming market, 70 billion of that is mobile. 70 billion. For those guys, this is a revolution.
Listening. Thank you for tuning in every week. Thank you for leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it.
If I was Epic, I'd be hiring some of the best talent away from Facebook, not from other game developers. I actually think
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the Book of Esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Lindsay Poss, Jeff Cohen, Victoria Taylor. William Collis is coming. I just taped the podcast with him. I think he's coming. For those of you who are new to the after show, welcome to the official after show of esports. We do here. What? Someone's saying something. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but it's all the stuff that didn't fit into the podcast. Still just as much fun, still just as important. And we get to do it most importantly with you, the viewer, the listeners, our fans, the people who consume the podcast. The best part about the live streaming is getting to interact with you guys. So if you're here and you're watching, ask questions, get in our faces, challenge us. We really welcome it. We love it. It's the best part of this show. It's the best reason for doing the live show, and we really appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure to check out our podcast, which drops every Thursday. Tell your friends about the live stream. If you're a listener of the podcast, go buy some Business of Esports merch from our website, thebusinessofesports.com. It really helps out everything we're doing here. Now, let's see. Sam says, I finally remembered to tune in for the live stream. Let's go. You guys are amazing. Also, William late, like always. It's becoming a signature. We may need to make it his. The professor may disappear. It may become something else. Greg says, hey guys. Hey Greg, great to have you. We got so much to talk about. It's been a busy week. We had, I will say, guys, an incredible, I hate to say, I'm not saying this every week, I promise. This truly was 2 exceptional weeks in a row. I'm not putting him on just yet. He's going to wait a second. We had 2 exceptional weeks in a row here. Last week, I hope you guys loved the Logitech episode with the head of gaming at Logitech. If you have any feedback on that, anything maybe we didn't ask, would love your feedback if you listen to that episode. This week, we have the head of partnerships at Riot Games, the guy in charge of doing all sort of the big deals on the esports side. Incredible guy, Matt Archambault, who actually we did a great panel at PAX with back when the world was normal. And we joked that the next time we might see each other in person would be at PAX again. But it's going to be an incredible episode with him tomorrow. We talk all things Riot, all things sort of Riot excellence, especially because they do some things really well that no one else is doing. And I highly recommend tuning in tomorrow. I will say, just to give you a bit of a tease, we did touch on a couple of specific things. Let me just share my screen here. We touched with Matt from Riot. We touched on a couple of things, namely them returning to China for League of Legends Worlds, and specifically how they feel about geography when it comes to partners and partnerships and sponsorships, etc. We also talked about this was the article, if you guys remember, where we had all the top esports teams valuations, that Forbes article, and which I can't find right now. But anyways, we talked about how almost all of them have League of Legends franchises and why he thought that was. And then finally, we discussed this article, which Anzu.io raised $9 million for in-game ad platform, specifically asking him what Riot was thinking in terms of in-game advertising. And I think you're going to find his answer very interesting because they are thinking about it. I will also say he made a huge announcement on the podcast. I don't want to give it away. Huge Riot announcement. You will have to tune in tomorrow to see what he announced on the podcast. But it's major. It's the first time you've seen it of anywhere, really. All right. How you guys doing? William, are you okay?
I like the way I was put into like isolation. Like,
what do you want me to do?
You were quarantined.
I was quarantined. Yeah, I was put out. No, I was. Yeah, it was very good. Very good podcast this week, though.
Yeah. I'm not overselling it, am I?
You couldn't oversell anything, Paul.
Okay.
And anything you do, it's impossible to oversell.
Jeff, I saw you snicker.
That felt like an insult. I don't know. He's
making
fun of your. He's making fun of your
compliment. It was a compliment. Maybe it was such a compliment it regressed.
Did you guys all see the video I put out today? The Prophet was right. Did you guys all see this video?
Oh, the Stadia.
Yeah, the Stadia one I did see.
No, not Stadia.
The GameStop
one.
Oh,
Don't worry,
yes,
we're gonna get to Stadia. I was right on that too.
500.
We should start with Stadia.
Let's start. We're gonna ease into Stadia because Stadia.
Wait, hold on. William, are you holding a mic?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I
Okay,
am.
perfect. When you make a really horrible joke, make sure you drop it so that we can't hear what comes next.
No, I'm actually holding a mic this week because for some reason my regular mic isn't detecting right now. I probably have to restart or something. So actually, this is kind of more fun though because I can be all like pro singer with it, you know. Plus,
You want to do a karaoke?
Little RGB. Look at that RGB light.
Don't. He's lying. It's because he's filming some TikToks after this, so he needs the wireless mic. Megan says in-game advertising intriguing. Megan, it's fascinating how Riot's thinking about it. It's obviously, when you see a company in the space raising $9 million, I think especially interesting. I mean, we're happy to talk about it more broadly as part of the live stream. Happy to sort of rehash anything that we went over on the podcast. Since Megan sort of responded to it, I'm curious. Lindsay, what do you think if you're playing a game, especially like League of Legends or Valorant, right? A Riot property, AAA kind of game. And one of the comments William made on the podcast is, well, there's a cafe in Valorant. It could be a Starbucks. Would it offend you as a gamer or would you not care?
It fully depends on how it's done. I think that games that stop and force you to watch advertisements is like a big no-go. And there's this debate when movies started offering, in movie advertisements about sometimes the product placement was just so obvious and irritating, but there's ways to sneak it in where I don't think it would offend too many people. I think you could make that cafe a Starbucks and nobody would be up in arms about it.
Probably not. I mean, the call out would be weird.
Right.
Two in the Starbucks. Victoria, I'm curious. The esports marketing professor. What do you think of in-game advertising?
Yeah, I mean, advert gaming.
Victoria having technical difficulties.
The
Okay.
freeze strikes again.
We're gonna get Victoria back unfrozen.
Did I freeze? Okay, I'm gonna.
Oh, so close.
You did freeze. Okay, we're gonna cut.
And now she's gone.
Let's discuss. I want to start with Epic Games, if you'll allow me, because there was a big story from Epic here. Well, big story about Epic, not from Epic, and it's two articles, in fact. But here's the big story: Epic Game Store freebies are attracting tons more gamers, but they're not spending. And what the article here talks about two things. Actually, let me just introduce the other article, which I wanted to talk about. Epic Game Store users claimed 749 million free games last year. Okay. This is a huge number. I don't think anyone can argue this. And they did grow as a consequence. There are 160 million accounts now on PC, up from 108 million. They doubled their monthly active users. Their daily active user count almost doubled. But fundamentally, what the other article mentions is that their revenue has not really increased in lockstep. So they've given away a lot more games, and they've generated a lot more active users through the Epic Game Store, but they're not generating really more revenue from it. I'm curious what you guys think of this, and does this mean the Epic Game Store is a failure? Like, what do we think the cost of these, 749 million free games is? Because that's not zero, right? That's got to be something. It's costing them to give away all these games. Just in general, your thoughts, Jeff. Maybe start with you on Epic's strategy here to give away free games, and not necessarily like when you have an article like this saying they're not spending more and the revenue is not keeping up. What does this mean? Does this mean the Epic Store is not working?
No, not at all. I mean, I think whenever you're building a new platform, particularly when you're going up against an entrenched competitor like Steam, and when you're building a two-sided platform, network effects come in, and that's a massive barrier to entry. So it's really hard to defeat kind of an entrenched platform like that. So giving away the free games was something they quite frankly had to do. Now, it is a little bit interesting that the revenue didn't seem to follow. but clearly if they have these daily active users, they will eventually start to spend. I imagine it's probably just some element of mix shift, or maybe we haven't had any big games come out on the platform or be exclusive to the platform. But I think to go, if you had told someone, from standing still when they announced the Epic Game Store, I don't know, what was it, 18 months ago, maybe, that they would credibly be a competitor to Steam within 2 years, I think most people at Epic would take that and chalk that as a massive win. The fact that they have 30 million daily active users, once you get users and they're in your ecosystem and clearly playing on your launcher, they will start to spend, and you've kind of gotten over the big hurdle so far. So, I'd love to get a little more information about, the revenue piece and why it's not following, but I think the fact that they've attracted people to their platform is a massive win for Epic just to start.
So let me just give you that number. 2019, 680 million of revenue, okay, with 251 million coming from third-party games, in other words, non-Epic titles, okay? 2020, 700 million with 265 coming from third-party games. So, essentially flat. We're not talking about a massive increase here. There is an increase, but it's not really significant, right? And when you think, what would be
the
cost?
Sorry, Paul. So the 680 and the 700 were total.
Correct.
So that means Fortnite, obviously declined, which is not surprising, but mathematically that does tell us something that's interesting.
I mean, what's interesting also is, again, what is the cost of those 749 million free games that they gave away last year? Right? Even if they're giving them away at 10, even if they're paying the developers 10 cents per download or something, right? You're still talking about a $75 million cost there. It's not insignificant.
Yeah, but look, I mean, I kind of think Jeff, this is one of those weird situations where, and I can't believe I'm saying this because this is not a good business thing to say. The details don't matter here. You're launching, this is a network effects driven platform, as Jeff said. It's extremely expensive to launch into and disrupt those things. Extremely expensive. Nobody thinks you can go against, any, two-sided marketplace like this, whether it's Facebook or, Instagram, and expect it to be a cheap, easy launch. So regardless of what they were going to do, they were going to spend a ton of money here, right, to come in. Now, the whole challenge in these things is getting the DAO, the daily active users, right? That's exactly right. As Jeff said, it's that is, once you have the DAO and they're seeing your store, that's the market established there, because particularly for a two-sided market like this, where sellers care about the users on the other side. This is definitely a first-led market where the buyers are more important than the sellers, right? Just to make that explicit, if you went to a game publisher and hi, I'm launching a store, nobody's there now, do you want to be on it? They'd be call me when people are on it, right? Whereas now they can call people up and say, hey, look at these millions of people as an incremental sales channel to buy, right? I don't think they're going to have a problem going forward lumping sellers on, and they clearly don't have a problem with the buyer side, at least in terms of activity. Yeah, there's something about conversion. And I can just tell you from using both the Steam and the Epic Store, Steam is way better at getting me to buy more. It recommends stuff. It does all these flash sales and promos. I think generally the interface is a little more integrated towards purchase, right? But guess what? Totally solvable problems, right? 100%. I think this is a case of they had an objective, which was to entrench in the market. It's probably disappointing that the revenues didn't follow linearly, but they will come. I don't think, you could tell me they lost, $150 million to them, but I wouldn't care. I'd say it's a massive success to have this daily active users numbers. Unless, and this is my caveat, unless the DAO is hiding something, which is it's not really storefront users, it's a Fortnite launcher. Do you know what I mean? Unless it's a masked DAO situation. But to be honest, I don't think that's what's happening here. Based on how I've heard people talking about Epic Games and its zeitgeist in the space, I think people really do use it as an alternative to Steam, particularly when there are great exclusive titles on it like Control. It's a thing that you might need to do sometimes.
Lindsay, I'm curious, if you believe William and Jeff here, does that mean there comes a day where Epic has to stop giving away games for free to get people on the store? That at some point that ends?
It's exactly what William was talking about though with network effects. As long as they have enough users on the network, more users will continue to grow the network. I'll be curious to see when their focus shifts from this customer acquisition part to customer retaining, or to enticing people to stay on the platform or spend more on the platform. I think that focusing on acquisition at first is obviously the main thing you have to do when you're competing with something like Steam. And now that they have those numbers, what are they going to do to bolster them, to keep people? Because everyone could leave tomorrow. This isn't quite entrenched enough yet. I don't think that they will, but I wonder like kind of when that point is when they shift from customer acquisition to customer retention, offering sales, doing fancy promos, doing all that stuff. Like when does that shift take place? I would guess pretty soon, hopefully.
Well, let me press you on this. If Fortnite disappeared tomorrow, everyone stops playing. Does the Epic Game Store have a chance?
It truly is hard to say, because there are exclusive titles, and I would bet that there's a decent amount of users out there who do want to stay on it. It's kind of the way I'm looking at it now is the same way I kind of saw all the streaming platforms, in that there isn't necessarily one. And obviously, Twitch dominates the space, but if something happened with Twitch tomorrow, would everyone leave it? Probably not. It's just that there's too many unknowns to figure out if people would up and leave. I mean, if Epic continued to offer free games, they'd stay. If they start competing with Steam on these deals and stuff, maybe they leave. Maybe developers like the 12.5% cut more.
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm going to make this super simple, right? Like here's the thing that I think people miss maybe about this. And sorry, Lindsay, I don't want to criticize you, but I think it's a little implicit in the comment here. That sounds really aggressive. I'm not trying to be aggressive. You're amazing. I love you. But like the way to think about these stores, and I really believe this, is consoles. Pretend that Steam is PlayStation and Epic is Xbox, right? Just pretend, right? Because it's fundamentally the same thing. They are a sales platform. You can think of consoles as having a DAO, the people who own the consoles, right? And the purpose of consoles is to then sell you games to monetize that DAO. And there is a revenue split, or there's allocation between the game sellers and the platform owners, right? Think of it as the economics are different, but think of them as roughly analogous, right? So the whole problem you have when you launch we all agree that exclusive content, at least historically, has probably been the most important driver to success of a platform, any platform, and like console business, right? I would argue the same should be true of game stores. Like what got Steam going? This is the fact that you had to have Half-Life 2. You had to play Half-Life 2, right? Like exclusive content is what drives adoption and retention in the space. If Xbox had no exclusive games and PlayStation had all of them, no one would buy Xbox because the stuff you want is there. So it's a content-driven market, right? Now, the problem is getting exclusives is really hard to do when you have no users, right? It's really hard to do. You have to pay because you basically pay the difference to the game developer, like copies they lost in sales by being exclusive to your platform should be your exclusivity fee, theoretically, like roughly, right? So taking this full circle, now that they have the DAO, they can start to solve the content puzzle, right? They can continue to buy more exclusive titles to the platform, and they can pay less per exclusive title, which is the revenue that entrenches platforms like this. So I really believe strategically what's happened here is the Epic Store, again, if the user numbers are to be believed, what Epic has done is it's found a way to break the economic cycle of exclusive content. And so over time, you're going to see the cost of it adding exclusive games goes down, right? And therefore, the sales and revenue on the platform will go up. That's my thesis.
So are you saying if people or if companies spend a lot on customer acquisition, then they don't have to spend as much on exclusive titles?
Well, I think the best way to say it, that is your marketing expense, right? Like we don't see a ton of Epic Game Store ads, do we? Like I don't think we're going to see a Super Bowl ad from the Epic Game Store. I don't go on Google and, see a ton of Epic Game Store ads. So this should probably be viewed as their kind of marketing expense. So if we look at it and say, I forget the number you threw out there, Paul, maybe 75 million or whatever the number is, that's not terrible for almost 2 years of advertising. Or I guess that was 1 year.
Well, that was a 10 cents assumption, which is aggressive. But the point is the games, once the game is exclusive, it markets the platform for you. The Epic Store does nothing. It just sits there. No one's like, oh, I'm going to go play Epic Store for 40 hours, right?
The reality is, other than Fortnite, there's not a lot of exclusives on the Epic Game Store. Is kind of the reality.
Because it didn't have DAO, it had to build. So acquiring exclusives was very expensive. Now that there is a DAO, my hypothesis is you should see more exclusives and therefore more spending.
Because you have the scale that you can actually make the money back because you have the DAO. Because it's like, how many exclusives are there for Steam? Everything was sort of exclusive because it was default, like it was the browser everybody used.
Yeah,
but it's not like there was a ton of exclusives in the last 5 years that Steam paid for. That
it's not really even talked about in that sense, right?
Right.
There's nothing that said like Steam never. I've never seen like advertised Steam exclusive, right? Or like, and there's a lot of like indie games that I'm sure are only on Steam and not anywhere else, but they don't advertise like Steam exclusive.
So if we assume that they get to parity, I think that what William is saying is once they get to parity, they've done the heavy lifting to get to somewhat close to parity on MAU and DAO. Now they're fighting on the same kind of playing field to some extent, where you don't necessarily have to, you can give special discounts. Like now you're kind of competing. Before it was like you're starting from a standstill and you're racing Usain Bolt, like you have no chance. But now they're kind of neck and neck, and they can actually like have a chance.
Right. They should focus on customer retention, which was the original point that I had.
I mean,
I thought your point was great, Lindsay. I don't know, William.
Yeah, William, you backed me up very aggressively.
Chris says my Epic library looks like my Steam library. Lots of games downloaded, not a lot of playtime. Chris, I'm totally with you there. I think that's a lot of people. And I have a funny feeling it's probably worse on Epic just because of all the freebies, I would guess. Like, I don't even know some of the freebies I've signed up for. It's like, it's free. I'll click on it. And other than a few like really big names that I know have been free, if you ask me to name like 3 free games they've given away, I probably couldn't name them. Still more loyal to Steam though. Epic Store equals Mixer. Steam equals Twitch. CSGO carries Steam and Dota. Yeah, I mean, you could argue Fortnite carries Epic though, right? Like, then that was my question. If Fortnite disappears tomorrow, do people really ever keep using the Epic Game Store? I have a funny feeling those DAO numbers would drop pretty precipitously.
But that defeats that argument. Literally, is just, it's almost like a pointless argument, right? Because Fortnite's not going to disappear tomorrow, so the DAO is there, right? Like, what?
The question is, it's decreasing clearly, right? Because the revenue has not really grown, so you could probably assume that Fortnite player base is decreasing somewhat slowly, right? When does that become a problem?
The players are still there that you can cross sell. So if you're doing enough promotionals and like, hey, the next big game, it's going to be a 20% discount versus Steam. Like, okay, I'll pick to play that game here. Now I get the tail because, if it's a live service game, it's not just about the upfront. It's about where you're playing, and that keeps the network effect going. So I see your point, but it's like, it's a little bit disingenuous to just argue like, well, if this massive thing that exists doesn't remain to exist, like what would happen?
I just want to bring Victoria back in here. Welcome back.
Thanks, guys.
So she can address Sam's comment here. Sam, and I want to go back to the previous discussion very quickly because I know you had thoughts on this. But Sam said League has had Kia, KitKat, and other big name sponsors advertised on their map during LCS and LEC games for a couple splits now, banners on the sides of walls and such. It's not too distracting, in my opinion. Sam, before Victoria cuts in here, I will say that, again, if you listen to the podcast tomorrow, one of the things mentioned by Matt in terms of the area of advertisement they were looking at might surprise you, and you may decide that might be too distracting. Maybe not. I don't know. Execution is everything with these things, but you may be surprised by their attitude. But Victoria, you were going to make a comment on in-game advertising.
Yeah. So advert gaming getting really exciting. I mean, it kind of started out, we were seeing a lot of like a Coca-Cola machine in a video game, like in GTA, or, we're seeing more murals, like the last comment Sam said, or banners or billboards. I'm a huge fan of more seamless integration where just like in today's day, you want to feel like you're not completely bombarded and it's not too try hard. So I'm actually a huge fan of the billboards. I think it's pretty funny that they can use that space the same way they use that real estate downtown Toronto where I can see them when I'm immersed in a game too. And I think it's just going to become increasingly important as we see the rise of the metaverse.
Agreed. I did try and convince Matt that they should launch a new champion, the Business of Esports sock, in League of Legends, but I don't think he was going for it.
No.
See right there. Do you guys see what just happened? That was advertising, but we just weren't supposed to know it.
Isn't that
Now
beautiful
right
how
there,
that works?
exactly.
Whoa.
That subconscious, you know.
I just broke the fourth wall. Sorry, Paul.
Martin says there's a group called Frameplay making an in-game ad platform that's programmatic, so each player sees custom ads on in-game environments. Yeah, Martin, there's I think I've probably seen about half a dozen startups going after like the in-game ad space. I think it's going to take time for those companies to make progress. I also think a lot of the publishers are going to want to do it themselves. I think especially the very biggest ones are going to hesitate to just sort of give carte blanche to, another company, a startup, to come in and like put advertisements all over their game. They're going to want control. And I think that will hold up sort of the rollout of these kinds of things. You will see it initially from companies like Riot doing it themselves and the way they want to do it. I think it will be quite a while before we really see it everywhere. Sam says, "Oh God, now I'm worried." Sam, if you play League of Legends, you maybe should. No, just kidding. You have nothing to worry about. Those guys at Riot are really smart. They know what they're doing. Okay, I want to move on. Let's talk about FaZe, because this is like a recurring, interesting kind of topic here. And the headline here was esports organization FaZe Clan signs with UTA. UTA is the huge agency that represents talent. They have like a bunch of Hollywood stars on their roster. And so basically it says here that the agency is going to work with FaZe to expand their content into scripted, unscripted, podcasting, live streaming, and brand partnerships. In other words, FaZe would like to become the Business of Esports. But it says here, in 2020, the Hollywood-based company teamed with Michael Sugar's Sugar 23 to launch entertainment arm FaZe Studios, and FaZe members are going to all be represented by UTA. The last time we saw this, William, maybe you remember, it was another esports team that had signed with a talent agency. I think it was 100 Thieves, right? That signed with CAA. Now we see FaZe sign with UTA. Does no one find this weird that these esports teams are fundamentally media companies and talent agencies, but are outsourcing their media business and talent business to other companies? Like, this all feeling very meta to me. And now I no longer know what FaZe actually does here. Someone tell me I've not understood this correctly.
It's not that they're signing these agents to represent the players, right? In like salary negotiations and stuff like that, right?
It's the whole organization. Now, it says here that there are some members of FaZe that were already represented by UTA, but I assume this means now all of them will be represented by UTA, in addition to the organization itself.
Yeah, it is odd. I mean, I see exactly what you're saying. It's like you're outsourcing what's supposed to be exactly what your whole kind of value proposition is. It's very weird. It's very hollow. I feel like it's very Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and just functionally, how does it work? I'm a big streamer. I'm represented by CAA. I join FaZe Clan. Do I lose my 8? Like, what happens? Like, it's just it like I don't know. I thought the whole reason why you had the talent agency aspect divorced was to have a functional structure between the media and the players, right? And then to some extent, the team itself was then taking on some aspects of a talent agency at an aggregate level. It's it's just like, I don't know. This is when Lindsay, Victoria, like, can you help me here? Like, I'm also trying to understand this.
Question for Lindsay, which is, do you remember when we had the discussion around the lawsuit between FaZe and Tfue, right? And part of that discussion was no, FaZe really helped them get an audience, built them up, right? That was their side of the argument, right? Which is, we created him, we gave him an audience, we gave him a platform. But if they're now outsourcing that, do they really have a leg to stand on, right? In a similar kind of situation?
I'm kind of with William here, where I don't really understand what's happening or why. But yeah, that does have them lose a leg up, because now obviously Tfue can say, no, it wasn't you, it was CAA
or CAA,
yeah, or whatever. Yeah, this I'm getting a little bit baffled by all these news stories, because I keep seeing stories about deals and things that are happening in partnerships and all this stuff with companies that are essentially the same. And then I don't see a lot of like output. Like I don't feel like I'm seeing a lot of news stories about like new shows on YouTube or partnerships with Netflix, or like I don't know what the long-term strategy is, but certainly we've been hearing these stories for 6 or 8 months now, and it's just kind of like, okay, we just keep hearing about them. At what point are we going to stop hearing about them and seeing some results of like, what are you doing?
But, I come back to Williams, like, all good companies become Disney, right? And I think last live stream we said, or maybe 2 live streams ago, we had the example of some team that was getting into the media side or something. We're like, well, look, see, they're going to become Disney, right? But now they're not really becoming Disney, right? They're sort of outsourcing everything Disney does. And they're more just a brand name, right? They start to feel more like just a label you slap onto something, and it's really other people doing all the work. I don't know if you guys feel the same way there. But if we see more of this, where's the value in esports teams?
Well, it would suggest it's on the competitive side, right? Like, this would make sense if it was like, so imagine it this way, right? Let's say it was TSM, like a hyper competitive team, right? You could make the argument that, or you could say, like, in that case, you're like, we're focused on winning championships. That's what we do. We knock it out of the park. That's a very difficult thing to do. That's our expertise. We recognize CAA or UTA or whoever, you make good videos. We want to win the championships. You make the videos about us winning the championship. So it's not, this could be a natural pairing. And in many instances, I could like it, but it just feels unusual here where FaZe has been a media and talent driven team. It just feels unusual for it then to be outsourcing its talent aspects. Like,
and I'll take that one step further, William, which is the 2 teams that have made this kind of announcement, this outsourcing announcement, are probably the most media focused of any of the esports teams, right? 100 Thieves and FaZe really were supposed to be more media companies than esports teams.
Yeah, and then the other piece is presumably this adds more cost, which puts more pressure on revenues, right? So I just point that out as well. Like, it's a little unusual from that perspective too. Like, this is like, now there's even more pressure on sponsorships and video content to deliver financially, because there's another layer in the cake that slices off its 10 or 15% or whatever the take is. It's a hypothetical number.
Trent says signing with a traditional media agency is a network marketing strategy for traditional investors, correct? Trent, I don't know if you guys understand this question. I'm not sure I'm reading it right. I definitely, as an investor, I've never thought of traditional media agencies as network marketing strategy, but I'm curious if you guys are reading this question the same way. Trent, I'd love a bit of clarification on the question.
Is it possible that they're striking these deals because they want access to the CAA, roster of stars to do collaborations, and maybe this is just like the easiest step to cut them in rather than doing an arm's length transaction, just have them sort of, be more heavily involved. I mean, I'm saying this, I don't think that would be a good idea, but I'm just trying to think of why it would make sense.
No, but that's a good point. If you want traditional stars like Tom Hanks, right? Like, if you want to do a mainstream crossover, this could make a lot of sense because you get a deeper talent stable.
Lindsay, you were going to say something. Yeah,
this is just the problem, though, because we just haven't seen, I mean, obviously with FaZe, it's been like one day, but with 100 Thieves, what have we seen as a result of this? there hasn't been anything particularly newsworthy when it comes to mainstream stars. There hasn't been anything particularly newsworthy when it comes to mainstream media appearances in any form. So that's where it's like, I mean, this is great, but you already had a media company that was working well on social media and that was working well for these sort of short bits of content and on YouTube and all that. So like, what's the goal?
It's also like esports teams have a lot of problems, but I feel like being cool and relevant is not one of them. Exactly. So it's not like you need Tom Hanks, right? If anything, Tom Hanks needs FaZe more than FaZe needs Tom Hanks.
God, I hope he's not listening. Poor Tom.
Tom
I'm
Hanks
sure.
I'm
sure he is.
He is.
He probably is.
He doesn't miss one episode, Victoria. He's a huge fan. Greg maybe has the comment of the day. He says, "Are they phasing themselves out?"
I like that one. Honestly, hats off to UTA though. I mean, FaZe is already pretty established as a media company, as we're going to call them. And that was my first thought when I heard about this is why wouldn't they just be increasing their team size? Like, why wouldn't they be hiring? If they do want to, if they do want to make a bigger bang into podcast, streaming, entertainment, and they need that support, I don't understand why they just wouldn't take an internal growth standpoint. But yeah, good job, UTA. I mean, they obviously offer some value that they felt that they needed to sign with them. So,
no question. I think, and you make a good point, Victoria, that we haven't made yet, which is, I think this is great for UTA, right? Like, this is a win for them. Whether it's a win for FaZe is questionable.
And we're also coming at this from from an outsider's perspective with like cold business rationality. I mean, it is possible that the executives at FaZe and the players at FaZe, got wooed by, stars. It was, hey, you get to come hang out with Tom Hanks. I love how we've made Tom Hanks like the epitome of star here. But like, it may have just been, hey, you want to rub shoulders with these A-listers, come sign on with our agency. You get to hang out with 50 Cent and Tom Hanks. Like, that may have been enough for these people at this business. We don't know how much this was like a rational, strategic, dollars and cents decision versus, we're FaZe and this is what we want to do.
It could also be defensive, right? Like, many of their stars were already with this agency. What if the agency was exerting pressure and saying, don't do that commercial, don't do that deal, come with us, we'll make it better for you. And FaZe had to cut them in to get more control of its talent. I mean, there's a lot. The bottom line is we don't know. We don't know, but it's fun to speculate and analyze the pros and cons of the different speculations.
Tom Hanks, I know you're listening. Make sure you come on the podcast so we can have a frank discussion around the realities of this contract and your very, very sort of the urgency you feel around being FaZe Hanks. Victoria, what were you going to say?
FaZe Hanks. I love it. No, I was just going to say the other thing I wonder is, I mean, FaZe has a lot of players. They have like almost 100 or 80 players registered to their name. I wonder, do you think that the players that aren't registered to UTA already, do you see this being a positive for them, like an opportunity?
I mean, no question, right? Like, being repped by CAA, UTA of the world personally is almost always a good thing for you, right? It means you have some level of influence, you have an audience. I think no question that the 50 that maybe weren't repped by a huge outfit before will see this as a plus for them, and maybe that's part of the pressure that they were feeling. Again, we can speculate, but unfortunately we don't know for sure. I just want to read some of these comments. Chris says, guess there's a demand for kids in sweatshirts for film extras. Not just any sweatshirts, FaZe sweatshirts. And Trent says, Jeff gets it that, and maybe Coca-Cola and Ford won't do business without the stamp of traditional media. Trent, I think if we had this conversation like 2 or 3 years ago, I might have agreed with you more wholeheartedly. Today, I will say again, we had a very interesting conversation with Matt from Riot, because he used to be at an agency, and over the years, he's seen the evolution of brands and how they feel about the esports space and the gaming space in general. And I think it'll be interesting for you guys to hear how he has seen that evolve, because it has evolved. It has changed. even Coca-Cola and Ford, knows about gaming now. The Real Nylon, welcome. By the way, I know you follow us on Twitter and appreciate all of the likes there. But great seeing you in the live stream. The Real Nylon says, "I'm sure Tom is flattered to be on the podcast." Yeah, I mean, he has no in-person appearance yet. He's a bit shy, he's a bit camera shy, but I'm sure we will see Tom here eventually. Agency could add esports talent to music festivals when they return. Also true. I have no doubt, and this is to Lindsay's point, that WTA has a million ideas of how to leverage FaZe talent. But to Lindsay's point, the question is, we haven't really seen these agencies execute that well or really do much, right? Big announcements, but like very little actual activation. And so I think anything at this point.
To be clear, I'd love to be wrong here. I mean, I would love to see cool stuff happen, but we just haven't quite yet. So
the Real Alan says that would be very cool. I agree. That would be very cool. Mark says, "Hi, everyone. Another great Wednesday night of Busy Sports." Mark, welcome. Great to have you. Greg says, "Will Tom Hanks become your version of Jimmy Kimmel's bed?" Yes, that's it. Sorry, we ran out of time. Tom Hanks was scheduled to be on the show, but we ran out of time for him. I like that. Trent says, "Don't you think the Good Old Boys Club on Madison Avenue still only spend money amongst those of the cloth?"
I gotta say, that's just a great line. Like, that's just great wording.
It's a great wording. I think, Trent, that also is changing. I think, maybe I think as we go on every year, that's less and less true. But I'm sure there's a part of that. And esports and gaming is still new, so there's always an aversion to anything new. But all of this is changing. And again, you'll hear directly from Matt at Riot tomorrow, where he clearly says the landscape has changed. We go in and they're not saying, what is gaming? I know my kid plays, but I don't know anything else. They're going in saying, what are the KPIs? What are the metrics here? We understand the difference between League of Legends and Valorant, right? There is a higher level of understanding among the big brands and the agencies that represent them than there ever was. All right, guys, we have to get to this this topic here. So near and dear to my heart.
Oh, is it the one I want this week or no?
Yes, of course.
It's not the one I want, Paul. You didn't put the one I want in the agenda.
What the announcement on Hearthstone Esports?
No. Well, the Sonic Prime, new Sonic Netflix TV show. No,
really?
Seriously. This is my whole point. Sorry, we can leave this, but like, where are you, Nintendo? How are you so slow? Wake up. Like every time I see it, wake up. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, William, but there was another article which I didn't put in the lineup for today, but there was an article about Nintendo canceling their Zelda show. They had planned a Zelda show. They had animated a pilot or something, and then they decided they were going to cancel it. And I think it was supposed to be on Netflix. So I don't really know why they canceled it. I'm sure if one of you guys can find the article and just send it to me. But that's interesting and I also saw a Sega announcement, speaking of Sonic, where they're splitting up the company. Again, I didn't put it into today's lineup, but it was interesting between gaming and their, what's it called? Pachinko or something?
Pachinko, yeah, Pachinko.
Businesses. I guess their gambling and their gaming businesses separated.
Like Japanese gambling machines?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware. There's a great novel of the same name, in case any of you were wondering.
But supposedly they are splitting it up.
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, hold on. Here's Victoria sent me this. Since you brought it up, William, before we get to
I'm totally stealing your thunder. I was speechless when I read
this. This is an interesting topic also. Let me just.
You show the picture of Star Fox animated. It's pretty funny. Looks like an old man.
Nintendo canceled Star Fox TV show after Netflix leaked Legend of Zelda plans. And so supposedly Netflix built up a pretty big slate of adaptations in recent years, Witcher, Castlevania, and there were rumors that they'd take on The Legend of Zelda. Nintendo denied it. Evidently, there was truth to those rumors. And as soon as sort of that rumor leaked, they canceled the Star Fox show that was supposed to run on Netflix. So Nintendo, freaked out supposedly and canceled their adaptation plans. Why does Nintendo act this way? I don't get it. Does anyone understand why? Like, they could have totally rode this massive hype train and after this leak, right? And put out a bunch of news about it. Everyone loves Zelda on Netflix, Star Fox on Netflix. Why freak out like this?
This is definitely my least favorite recurring topic that we do, because it's the same comment every time. They don't want to change.
Well,
I agree.
On, guys. Let me just put this with the story I did have in the lineup, which was this: Nintendo profits soar as people play games during pandemic, right? And they talk about how it's April to December profits surged to 376 billion yen from 196 billion yen the previous year. I mean, this is a huge increase, right? This is just April to December. Its 9-month sales jumped 37%. They sold 24 million Switch consoles during the 3 quarters through December, and 12.5 million Switches during the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year. So they nearly doubled in the last 2 quarters. Switch sales still going strong. Holiday sales super strong. 400 billion yen profit for the year is what they're expecting. That's 3.8 billion US dollars. Like, this is a company on a roll, and we get they don't want to try anything new, and we get that's a recurring theme, but like, Jeff, maybe you have some ideas here. This is a public company, right?
Yeah.
Why are the analysts not asking about
it's
these
the
other
Japanese
things?
Nature of it? Now, I mean, William probably has more of a cultural sense of this, because I know this is kind of an area that you have a lot of background in and understanding in. But, people have tried, and almost the numbers that you just said and the success they've had make this, make the move into broader entertainment even less likely, right? The only reason, if you recall the history, the only reason that Nintendo got into mobile was because the Wii U was so bad that they were getting crushed. So they were like, okay, like I guess we have to get onto this smartphone thing. And they did it 5 years too late, and they did it terribly, and it hasn't worked. But the only reason they did it is because they fell on their face, and they finally needed to, give kind of investors something. Now they do have an activist shareholder in there now. We've talked about this in the past with Value Act, who's had a massive track record of success with, I think, Microsoft, Adobe.
Right. So how do they let this happen?
10 different campaigns. The problem is, Nintendo's board is just entrenched. Their shareholder base. It's really not possible to go activist on Nintendo. Now they've worked with management, and they've said that Nintendo is doing a lot of the things they're talking about. But things are going well, right? You're not going to get people to make drastic changes when things are doing well, despite the fact that they should. So we will see Nintendo make this shift in 5 years. It's just a fact. Once the next console comes out and it flops. I hate to say it, but that's what's going to happen.
Okay, Victoria, you're the head of communications at Nintendo.
Okay.
This rumor leaks. What do you do different here?
I mean, I'm gonna side with Jeff on this. I mean, I think the idea here is that they should be looking into the future and what else they need to get involved in. But with a record year with their console sales and Animal Crossing, I mean, they just want to keep lighting it up among the people that have just become gamers. I mean, without even looking into the research in this, I'm thinking that the reason Nintendo killed it is because all the kids are at home, and it's just an entry level cost-wise. It's kid-friendly, and parents just need something to keep their kids busy. And this was the perfect answer. So I think that their focus is really just how do we keep these young gamers engaged in Nintendo and not switch over to PlayStation or Xbox or to PC and keep coming up with great games. But again, it's not that that's the right answer. They should be expanding.
You guys are fundamentally saying that the risk of flopping on a TV show is so great that essentially they...
To be honest, I think it's actually, I mean, that would really go after the nostalgic crowd. And I think a lot of their success really was among the younger, newer gamers last year. So that's the way I see it. But no, to your point, would a flop on a TV show be a make or break? No. Roll the dice, go for it. They have the resources to do so, but it's not their style.
I mean, it's sort of in this article. I want to find the exact wording. They sort of mention it where they say that they had been sort of they had been burned on previous projects and things like that. And actually, Chris even brings it up. Nintendo's still gun shy after Super Mario Super Show, but it's like it's one of these things where if this, let's say they come out with the Zelda show, right, on Netflix, and this actually ties back to a conversation we had with Matt from Riot. What is the likelihood that people point the finger at Nintendo versus pointing the finger at Netflix, right? Because when you watch something on Netflix and it's terrible, you're like, I don't look for the who produced this show to go after them, right? I'm like, wow, this Netflix show sucks. You would think that would offer them some level of comfort. No, Lindsay? I don't know. I don't know if it's a bit of a tangent, but I'm curious if you think Netflix might take most of the heat here, not Nintendo, if it is a flop.
Oh, I agree, and I think Netflix would. The same way Netflix is celebrated when everyone liked The Witcher and not, CD Projekt Red, who made the Witcher game, or whoever they tagged to produce the Witcher show. But no, this is just so sad. I mean, give the people what they want one time.
So Trent says, "Rip Star Fox series." Martin says, "Oh no, people know about our awesome TV plans. Better cancel them." And Chris says, "Rip Captain Lou." There you go. So that's the Nintendo story. There you go, William.
I think it's the two great what ifs in gaming is why doesn't Nintendo do movies and why doesn't Disney do games? At some point, Disney's just gonna buy Nintendo.
Yeah, which is like exactly what we're waiting for.
Yeah, it would solve so many problems for the whole industry. We could all stop talking about this.
They just don't do it. He would be perfect for Pixar. Please. Anyway, okay, let's move on.
Just take a moment to appreciate that Sassy Jeff is out in full force this evening. I love Dad Jeff. He's got so much more sass. So much less time for everyone's crap.
Dad Jeff has more sass. There you go.
And it's these same recurring topics. We got to just churn through them. They don't do it. All right, move on. What's the next topic?
Yes, Jeff. And where is the Pokemon MMO?
That's coming as well.
That's coming as well.
World of StarCraft. It's all coming. We're good. Activision, Bobby Kodak's taking it to the moon. Next topic. Boom, boom, boom. Let's bounce. Let's do this. Lightning round.
By the end of the year, this live stream will be 6 minutes long, and it'll just
it'll be called Jeff's Grievances.
Jeff's Grievances.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about our probably this podcast's first true love, and that is Google Stadia. Jeff, do you want to just accelerate through this one?
This is a brand new narrative that's never been discussed.
Google Stadia was a good idea that was doomed to fail always. Paul was right. Google has now shut down its internal studios. Jade Raymond is the most fascinating person in games because she has this incredible reputation about making games, but she hasn't made a game in about 15 years. Not sure how that's possible, but good for her. I feel bad for all the people who went to Google to go make games and got basically, fired. That's really unfortunate from a people perspective. The tech is great for all intents and purposes. It just shows that just having tech and not having a business model, even if you're Google, it doesn't work. It probably will live on, much to Paul's dismay. It will probably be white labeled. I'm sure they'll partner with Activision Blizzard, Ubisoft to kind of give them their own streaming platform, which arguably maybe was what it should have been all along. And there are plenty of people across the industry, Paul included, who called this, ahead of time and are being proven very right. So that's my quick take.
Just a bit of a personal sort of this is somewhat cathartic for me. Like, I was booed at PAX for calling Stadia hot garbage. I took a lot of heat online for calling its demise. In fact, I specifically pointed out this initiative as basically too little, too late, and would never work. And so I feel I feel very vindicated. It's been a good week from a prophecy standpoint. The question is for you guys, in a world where, and I have another article which I'll bring up after, but in a world where every big company and their cousin is either buying up game studios to great success or starting game studios to somewhat great success, right? Like, how did Google mess this up so badly? Right? We're literally talking about from beginning to end, I think less than a year or maybe about a year. I don't remember the exact timeline on the announcement of this sort of studio, but how did Google mess this up so badly? Because we've talked at length about how they messed up Stadia, right? Like the Stadia was doomed to fail. I don't necessarily want to spend too much time there because I think that end is also inevitable. We'll be talking about it on the podcast at some point next year or towards the end of this year. But how did they mess up the game studio so badly? Anyone? I don't know. I know how Jeff feels.
I don't want to hog the mic, but I can go quick. I mean, the dirty secret is this is kind of a recurring thing for Google, right? Like they start projects and they scrap them at the first sign of, when they're not going so well. They had Google Plus, the social network, gone. Google Glasses, gone. Google Stadia, done. I'm sure there's 25 others that people can name in the comments that have failed. At the end of the day, it could come down to, this is probably a people story, right? I'm sure, the right people at Google didn't have buy-in, because clearly Google has all the resources. Like you said, they could have done this. They had the capital, clearly had the intellectual capital to build the tech, and they're clearly smart enough to come up with a business model that works, or I would hope. They have all the MBAs in the world that work there. So I think this is a management leadership, top-down issue. And I'm sure someone could probably write a fascinating, deep dive book or article into it. Similar to how Jason Schreier just wrote one about, Amazon's failures. I think someone could take those two, Google and Amazon's failures, and write a really interesting book, just about big tech and gaming. But I'll shut up now because I've been talking a lot.
No, I'm curious who else thinks it's a people issue or leadership issue. And Jeff brought up a good point in his recap, which is they hired someone to lead this who had not made a game in 15 years, which it feels a little bit like the Activision MLB hire, right? Like maybe not the right person for the job. Not attacking anyone personally here. It seems like a questionable leadership decision. I don't know if you guys feel the same way or if maybe you felt from the beginning that Google shouldn't be in the games business. I don't know. Lindsay, you had some thoughts.
No one tops the MLB hire. Anyways, no, it might have been a leadership problem, but I see more what Jeff is saying and having the buy-in with the right people. I think there's actually a kind of a negativity with having too many resources because you're too big to fail. If this fails, it doesn't matter. I mean, Google's still going to make money tomorrow. They don't care if it fails. They didn't care that Google Plus failed. If you're not passionate about it, and you look at Amazon's failures, there's been many. I mean, the Fire Phone was one of them, but Jeff Bezos didn't love the Fire Phone. You know what he loves? He loves this company, Blue Origin. So what did he just do? He stepped down so he can go launch rockets into space. If you don't get buy-in from the people who are kind of making the pulling the strings and making the big decisions at the very top, or someone who's passionate about it, who can advocate to those people. And maybe the person heading this just wasn't necessarily, passionate or clear enough with it. I don't know. But I do think that there's a too much resource problem in that they can afford to fail. So who cares?
This is my positive spin on this. Good companies take risks, fail fast, recognize it, and move on. Like, there are two ways this story could have gone. It could have dragged on for 6 years and hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Or Google could look at this and say, you know what? Great idea. For whatever reason, it didn't work the way we thought it would. here is a new incarnation of it as a white label product that may very well work. I think we're giving short thrift to the potential of white label plus Google here. I really do. Right. I really stress that.
Who's going to white label that, William? Who's going to white label it?
Let me make my point. I want to leave that aside. But the other thing is, look at Google. I was Googling in the background here. There's like all these websites of everything Google's killed. It's their culture.
They tried it up because the real nylon. There you go. There's killedbygoogle.com. And you can get all the extensive list of every product they've killed.
So I view this positively. This is why Google is a great company. They try something, they invest into success, and if they don't want to double down, they reassess the commitment. And by the way, I don't know what this means for gaming, but I think for Google, it's great. And by the way, this doesn't preclude Google from trying other things in gaming, right? In fact, I think they will. I think one of the things you've seen from Google is they will launch similar services to things they've tried and killed in the past because they recognize market conditions can be different, learning can be different, right? So I'm positive on this. I think there's a phoenix here. There's a silver lining here, which is a mature company that makes smart business decisions and understands when to lean in and when to reassess.
I also think that given that Stadia is a more retail company, if it's not catching on with your consumers, with your average American or international consumers or whatever the individuals, if you can't kind of get that cultural network effects driven adoption to happen, then there's no point. They just shut down Loon, which was a way bigger project. I don't know if you all saw that. After 8 years, I think, of trying to deliver cell phone service through large weather balloons. 8 years, lots more money than Stadia. But because that wasn't a consumer driven business, I think that they thought that they could kind of get on for a little bit longer. Whereas I think in a consumer-driven business, you can see pretty quickly if it's going to work or if it isn't. And circling back to earlier, that's why Epic Game Store is looking good at the moment.
Yeah, William, your argument falls apart, right? Because if you just look at the history of Google, none of it shows like, hey, we made really smart decisions. We acted fast when things weren't working. Like Stadia hasn't been working for a while. They haven't killed it. Google Hangouts didn't work for 8 years. Now, in the midst of a pandemic, when they should be soaring, this should be a product everyone's using. Now they decide to kill it. Like, we're talking about fundamentally a company that seems to have no rhyme or reason, or at least good business reasons about when they kill things and when they let them survive.
What's fascinating to me is that they clearly invested a ton of money. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars into this, if not more, possibly even more. And they brought in some of the right people, right? Phil Harrison was the head of it. He, I think, launched the PlayStation. He worked at Xbox. Like, we're talking about a games industry executive, like well respected. They didn't bring in, like Johnny Joe or whatever on the street, or move someone from Gmail over who knew nothing about games. Like this was a real executive hire. And he seemed to have not learned the number one lesson of launching a console. You need exclusive content. They had their only exclusive game. I can't even name what it was. It was like some horrible game that I can't even remember. It's baffling to me that like that seems so obvious that like, how did they not, like, I would love to read the tell all where it's like, hey, we all knew this was going to be a problem, but we couldn't get buy-in, or, hey, we tried to buy Activision Blizzard, but like Sundar and whatever, Larry Page wouldn't sign off. Like, I just would love to know, like, there's some other story, right? Because these guys didn't all sit there and say, hey, here's what we need to do. We're going to launch a console with no games. Okay, but like, it's just like it
did happen, right? So we can sit here and be apologists, like, well, they're all geniuses, and it's the greatest company in the world that only makes the best decisions. But Stadia sucks. No one plays it, and they've canceled now their games. Like, we have to reconcile reality with like not just being apologists for bad decision making at Google, right?
And to William's point, they may have made the right decision today on February 3rd, 2021, but they clearly made the wrong decision up until this point. Yeah. And it was so obvious that it was the wrong decision. That's where the failure was. William might be right that shutting it down today is the right business decision today. But when it launched, when Paul, the day it launched, said, this isn't going to work, like,
why does no one ask me how I knew this? This wasn't just like, it's in the air. Like, there was well thought out reasons why I call these things correctly time after time, right? It's I don't know. Like, no one asks how this happens is not. There's good reason for it. They trotted out all these guys on stage, future of gaming, negative latency, right? I can smell the bullshit from like 10 miles away, right? There's reasons why this didn't work. And it's probably 50% people reasons. It's probably 25% Google culture reasons. And it's probably 25% just bad decision making, right? Like there's some mix of factors.
I think those are all the same.
Well, and Paul, to your
people.
Point, they did just announce more austerity measures. Sundar has come in and been much more about the balance sheet and looking at it and making smart decisions than a lot of the previous people. So they're cutting more and more things as we go on now. So even if it was the right decision a year ago, they're still making moves.
This was like a tiny project in the realm of Google. Trying to take over $150 billion market. Like the prize was big enough that I think they should have gone all in or nothing at all, right? Like dipping your toe in.
The curse of being half pregnant.
Yeah, like this wasn't. Hey, we're gonna try and like put up weather balloons that like shoot internet to Mars and like light the Earth and like, create solar energy for the world. Like they're trying to create a console. As revolutionary as it quote unquote was, like they're creating a console. It's not like curing cancer. Like they should have done this. They half did it.
Victoria, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
how much do you think the failure of Cyberpunk will precipitate the failure of Stadia? Because there's one theory I had, and I think I've seen now articles, other people sharing this theory, which is Stadia was counting on Cyberpunk to be a massive success, right? They figured people could not play it on their PCs and maybe not even on their consoles, so they were going to play it on Stadia, and this was going to be the big hit that was going to launch them sort of back into the game. When Cyberpunk flopped, essentially, right? Do you think this was a factor in Stadia's sort of downfall here?
100%. I mean, they kept this project alive for as long as they did. And I mean, even after last year's monumental growth in the industry, that's when they really should have been making a push to bring this thing to life and get it to where it needed to be. Personally, I think that they were banking on Cyberpunk being what Fortnite is to Epic for Stadia. And I think that after they started to realize that Cyberpunk wasn't living up to expectations, that maybe they just found themselves in a bit of a hole in terms of their investments and in terms of their capacity to see this through, and they crumbled.
Can we
guys talk? Hold on.
The problem with
go ahead.
So you may be right that may have precipitated it, but one, Cyberpunk was never going to. Maybe they thought it was going to be, but it was never going to be a panacea for Stadia, right? Like the only beauty with Cyberpunk was that they were actually getting it day and date. They weren't getting it exclusive. If they were getting it exclusive, and it flopped
because it's hard to run, I think they might have been counting on, hey, look, you don't need the $3,000 gaming PC, right?
Maybe it could have been a good test case, but maybe. But even still, I don't know. I find it hard to believe that one, game would have really sort of propelled them. But I guess if it proved out the use case, then you very well could be right. My theory, my suspicion is, remember we did a story a few weeks back where it was like, wow, when Microsoft was coming out with Xbox, they tried to buy EA and they tried to buy Nintendo and they were laughed out of the room. I bet we will see an article in the next year that Google approached Activision Blizzard or EA and either, they couldn't come to terms or they just weren't, EA wasn't interested, or that the leaders of Google Stadia wanted to do that, and someone up the food chain, either the Google board or Sundar said, no, we're not spending $75 billion on a game studio. You have your little project and you have your budget, but we're not going out and spending $75 billion. I will bet you that happened because the people who started Stadia, they're not idiots. They knew they needed exclusive content. I think they thought they could go buy a studio, and for whatever reason, it didn't work internally or externally. But I will. That'll be my prediction for 2021.
I always see it as a people problem first and a decision-making problem first, and it's been clear as day here. I've always said probably the biggest underachievers in the industry today are Google on the gaming side and YouTube gaming. If you look at the management there in terms of the resources they have access to, the smarts they have access to, and how little relatively that they achieve with those resources, it's disappointing.
One thing I just want before we move on, and there's two really good books written by Dean Takahashi, who's a great guy from GamesBeat, about the founding of the Xbox, that if you haven't read, I would definitely check out. I mean, they really tell the story of what had to happen internally at Microsoft, the politics that had to go on, the buy-in that they needed to get from different teams and up the ladder. If you read those books, you'll understand why I'm saying what I'm saying about the internal politics and how that probably more than anything sunk Stadia. They're great books.
I'd say Dean Takahashi is one of the best people writing about games today. Like you should read more of his stuff.
Chris says, end of the day, this is all the fault of Wi-Fi gamers. Use Ethernet, damn it. Chris, I totally agree. 100% in agreement on that. I just wanted to show a related story. And this is, as everyone knows, Google was not the only big tech company in the business of trying to make games. Amazon also has and had ambition in that space. And what's interesting is this article came out today, in fact, just earlier today. And the headline here is from 9to5google.com. New Amazon CEO commits to making video games following closure of Google Stadia Studios. Now, what's doubly interesting about this article is there was another article very disparaging about Amazon's game efforts, essentially calling it, there was a bro culture and it was misguided and they were too ambitious and this is why their games didn't succeed. And right, they're really, really sort of hardcore going after Amazon game studios. And it's interesting because the new CEO, basically on his first day on the job, makes a comment specifically around their commitment to making games. Totally different strategy here, right? Where Google's getting out of the business and Google is, even with new leadership, reaffirming their commitment to the business.
Well,
what were you going to say, Justin?
You're seeing a lot of the same similarities between Amazon and Google. And the article about Amazon, by Jason Schreier is a really good one. And Jason's another guy, writing incredible stuff about the games industry, just like Dean. What I think is interesting is the fact that this is Andy Jassy's second day on the job as the CEO of Amazon, and he's talking about gaming. I mean, that tells you in and of itself. Like,
that's exactly what I wanted to say. That's like literally this is your moment, right? Like this is probably the most significant leadership shift that will happen this year in industry ever, right? And it shows you how central Amazon must think gaming is to their plans moving forward. I think that's like, we cannot miss that insight, right?
I will quote him specifically. He says, some businesses take off in the first year and others take many years. Though we haven't consistently succeeded yet in AGS, Amazon Game Studios, I believe we will if we hang in there. Lindsay, is this totally different attitude, right? Like commitment to the long run here?
They have the resources.
Is he purposely trying to make Google look stupid here? Because the timing is also suspect, right? Google shuts down their studio.
Normally I would think that, but to be honest, with the transition in leadership at Amazon being such a huge deal, I feel like he's probably only thinking about himself and what he wants. So,
but like, if you've got a huge competitor in Google, right? Isn't it a nice opportunity as they're shutting their business down to put out a statement that you're committed to yours? Like, do you not find
it's very like cherry on top to me though. I said, I have a feeling he's really only thinking about himself and what he wants just because this is such a big deal. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt that it's at the same time.
Victoria, I'm curious. Do you place the same level of importance on this announcement as Jeff and William do, right? Is this lip service from Amazon, considering they haven't put out really a successful game that anyone has played? They've canceled games, but is this just lip service? And will they end up in the same bucket as Google's games effort.
Yeah, I mean, the headline, it catches eyes. I take this more of like, I'm looking at him kind of big dogging a little bit. I think it's more just a power move. I mean, this was trending for Google over the past couple of days, so I think he jumped on that opportunity in order to just really put himself out there and be a little bit aggressive and get things stirring. But at the same time, I don't think that he would say that. I mean, he's going to be held accountable. So I mean, that also must mean that they do hope to see the growth in their gaming sector. So it's hard to say. I mean, I don't take it as seriously maybe as some people do and think, oh my God, it's coming soon, or wow, we can expect big things soon. I take this more as just a power move personally.
Jeff, do you think any analyst will ask Andy Jassy, the new CEO at Amazon, about gaming? Do you think that any gaming question will come up at all?
No, it's just so small. I just don't think that, like, if you're an analyst, it's kind of like there's so many other questions that you could ask to look smart. I feel like, and that's 90% of when you're asking a question on a conference call, is you're trying to virtue signal or make yourself look smart to some extent. So probably not. Maybe one of their analysts, like Laura covers them, Laura Martin, right? So maybe she's kind of got a gaming background. Maybe she thinks it's a creative question. I don't know. But it is far down the food chain in terms of, what they're doing at Amazon. So I doubt it, but it's cool that he commented on it for sure.
Greg, thanks for coming. He says, I got to go, but I'll be at the clubhouse on Friday. Greg, it's a perfect reminder for anyone watching. We're now doing a weekly Future of Fun Fridays hosted by the Business of Esports. You'll get all of us there on Clubhouse every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And Clubhouse, for those of you who don't know, it's like an audio only social network. We have a room. You're free to jump into the room, hang out, talk, discuss, just listen quietly if you'd like. But as always, we love when people come and participate. It's the Business of Esports Future of Fun Fridays on Clubhouse, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Greg, thank you for that reminder to push it. We will see you on Friday. Guys, I have one last story to do. We got through everything, and this one, this one's interesting. I'm just going to introduce it, and then you guys are just going to comment. I have no thoughts on this one. It's from CNBC.com, and the headline here is, Elon Musk says his startup Neuralink has wired up a monkey to play video games using its mind. The subheadline says, Elon Musk said in an interview that a monkey had been wired up to play video games with its mind by a company he founded called Neuralink. Neuralink put a computer chip into the monkey's skull and used tiny wires to connect it to its brain. It's not an unhappy monkey, he said during a talk on Clubhouse. So I guess this is the monkey, and the monkey can play games with his mind. Thoughts on this?
What kind of games are we talking?
That's an excellent question, Victoria. I think I don't know if it's
like, is it Pong?
I just want to see their product roadmap. Like, how do they describe these projects in their, monkey play video games with mind, psychic attack on people with force push? Like, what is in the pipeline?
Yeah.
Well, Elon, when he posted about Neuralink for the first time, hold on, I'll show you this. He said, short-term goals, solve brain spine injury. So that's a lofty goal. Long-term, human AI symbiosis, right? Latter will be species level important.
I have two thoughts here. I mean, one, this literally is like, something from Silicon Valley. Like, it feels like this is a joke. Number one. The Silicon Valley, the TV show. Sorry, that's number one. And number two, I mean, isn't this literally like the plot of Planet of the Apes? Like, we should not be doing this. Like, don't give the monkeys any sort of AI cognitive. Like, they're gonna come after us. We're putting chips in their brain. This is a terrible idea. Stop all this.
Maybe they will defend us though in the event of a robot, revolution or zombie apocalypse.
Is that
maybe we need the monkeys on our side?
Are you talking about monkey army? I think you're talking about a monkey army.
Yes, maybe we need a monkey army. Chris says monkeys will rule the Matrix universe before we get there. Tread carefully. here's a question for all of you, and it's a stupid question, but I'm actually genuinely curious. With a show of hands, which one of you would volunteer for a Neuralink implant if it meant you could potentially play games with your mind? No one? Not a single person?
Do it?
I would do it
Paul,
in a second.
Well, you go first. You go first, and I'll go after you.
I'd be a cyborg. Who doesn't want to be a cyborg?
Guinea pig.
No, none of you would even think about it.
No.
No.
It's not even for like fear of procedure or things going wrong or whatever. Like I really like hanging out with me as I am. I'm cool with it.
But imagine I could be sitting here talking to you guys and my brain is playing a game. Like, I don't know.
I don't love games that
How
much.
would you be able to do that? How would you be able to carry on like those two things at once?
Well, the same way I have other thoughts in my head than just what's the next question I'm going to ask.
True, but what happens if it malfunctions and all of a sudden you're saying what you're thinking and doing crazy shit?
Josh said, thanks for being the Planet of the Apes voice of reason, Jeff. Greg, maybe the monkey was playing Hearthstone with William. Yes. No, even the monkeys know that's not a good game, Greg. Even the monkeys have some taste. And the real Nylon says, yeah, we're setting ourselves up for either failure or success. Robots might be scarier than them.
How long until an esports team signs a monkey?
That would be interesting.
That would be so fun. I would totally go to the arena for that.
I mean, now we're talking. It's like,
Chris, are you with me?
Like SeaWorld.
Would you get the implant too? Because he says cybertech me, so I'm assuming you'd get the implant with me. Except I think he's worried. What happens when Elon hacks us all? I mean,
yeah. Or what happens if we spontaneously combust like a Tesla? Like, I'm not trusting Elon just yet. Like, let him produce some real cars first.
Update. You'll stop having seizures now. Haha.
I mean, the reality is we've already been hacked. If you have an Amazon and Alexa or a Google, whatever in your home, trust me, Amazon and Google are already listening and watching everything you do. And Chris says, absolutely. All right. Guys, before we wrap up, we got to do our segment, our favorite segment.
Can we do? Yeah. I have a topic request.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Near and dear to my heart. Can we talk about EA bringing back NCAA?
I did have it in my lineup.
Very exciting. And I'm curious if people think it could be an esport. I just want to hear everyone's opinions because I think this is
also. I'll give you two things here instead of just one. EA is bringing back college football gaming, and sports fans are ecstatic. That's one headline. And then the other one was EA reports $211 million profit, and their shareholders approved the Codemasters acquisition. 5% increase in net revenues for the third quarter of its fiscal year. So good quarter for EA and interesting announcements for sports fans. What did you want to talk about, Jeff, related to this?
I want to talk about how exciting this is and the esports aspects of it. I mean,
Will you have something to play now for our What Are You Playing segment?
Yeah, this is great. I'll be able to have something to play. I mean, well, just in general, I do think there's a massive esports opportunity, right? If every college can be, you can have colleges playing as themselves in a virtual world in NCAA football. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. Maybe I'm just like a huge football fan, but to me, that is a pretty exciting esports, opportunity. We saw, I don't know if you guys remember back over the summer when Big Cat from Barstool was playing NCAA football 2014, the game from 2014 on Twitch, and he was getting like 50,000 viewers a night. So I think there is a pretty massive community around this. And I don't know, I think there's some creative stuff that could come of this.
How do you guys feel about specifically EA said that they have to, or that they're choosing, I guess, essentially to make the new game without the names of the players, without the images or likeness of the players, because of NCAA rules, supposedly. So basically, you're going to get a lot of nameless and faceless kind of generic players. Does that matter? Because I feel like that would matter for an NFL game. Victoria, do you think that matters for a college esports, like a college football game?
100%. I think 100% that's going to be an issue. Not an issue, but I don't think people are going to be happy about it.
Like, and I may be dumb on this. Maybe Lindsay, you know a bit better, but like, to me, college football is not so much about the individual players. It's like, I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm a University of Michigan fan, right? Like, it could be, John Smith or, whoever, but it doesn't matter who the player is. If you're a fan of like that college, you sort of don't care. Does the same translate to the game, you think, or?
I think it does for the most part. I mean, Victoria's not wrong. Like, people do follow individual college athletes, but at the same time, if you're a fan of college football, you also know that the college players aren't getting paid. So to exploit their likeness in a game is just really not fair anyway. And I think that people who will play the game are fine with it just being a generic team as long as it's their team.
I'm also Canadian, so we don't have that scene.
The name and likeness rule could change by the time this comes out. I mean, that's a couple of years from now. So there is a lot of movement around that, kind of allowing players to opt in, and there's a lot of creative ways they can get around it. But I think Lindsay's point is right. I think if you're an Ohio State fan, you're a fan of the team, not necessarily the players, because realistically the players are there for 2-3 years maybe, and the best ones obviously leave and go on to the NFL. I don't know. I think there's an opportunity between maybe it's on Saturday mornings before, rather than watching College Game Day, you're watching your team play the virtual team that they're going to play that day. I don't know. Maybe it's just the sports fan in me. I think it's cool.
Well, how do you guys feel about the comments here?
Year over year, though, just to be clear. Like, there won't be people buying the newest, latest version every time because there's no new players to play.
That's true. But
year over year, it'll hurt some, but I don't think it'll hurt.
And without player likeness, it'll be interesting to see how they monetize long term, right?
So the way the game always was historically, there never was player name and likeness. It was just the player, like it was like they just didn't have their name, but it was the quarterback on Ohio State was still the best player if it was the best player. You know what I mean? Like Tim Tebow was number 15 on Florida, just didn't say Tebow. It was just a lefty quarterback named number 15, and he was the best player in the game. So I don't know if that will still be the case. I don't know.
So Chris brings up an interesting question here. Could be an esport, but what was the viewership for the Madden Pro Bowl? Say no to sports esports. And then Real Nylon and him are having a discussion here. I think that a collegiate esports would take off with this over professional. Now Americans will not watch digital sports versus real people sports. That I'm curious to get your thoughts on, guys, because I think digital sports like esports have not drawn the biggest audiences, right? Definitely nowhere near their sporting equivalent. I think Jeff brings up a good point, which is like, could it sit next to a traditional sports broadcast and that be sort of the gateway for people to get into it? That's interesting. Real Nylon says, I don't know. NBA's esports league has a large viewership through ESPN. Jeff, you played it, so you can handle concession stand costs. Yeah, so that would be I think Chris's question is good, and the Real Nylon's comment is good, which is, what's the appetite for esports versions of real sports? I don't know. Historically, not massive, but I think that may change. And I have seen a lot of excitement around this college football game, more so than any other EA sports game in a while. So I don't know if that's somewhat telling. There is a lot of hype around it. And I think people underestimate the fandom around college sports in the US. Like it is in some ways, I think, way more hardcore even than professional sports.
Oh, it's very cult-like.
Yeah.
This is extreme.
And I never understood that, right? I never understood, like, you never went to this school. Why do you love Ohio State or whatever, right? Like,
well, you grew up in Ohio, and it's like part of
I get it, right? But it was
Canada had a sports team, like,
yeah, Canada just had one sports team, only one. There's no NHL. There's no
Chris,
NBA.
Chris's point is a good one too. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. It's true. When you haven't had something in a while.
I'm not predicting that this is going to take over, League of Legends. I just think, it clearly has a hardcore fan base that, like Paul said, we've all seen has been pretty rabid for it. And it is because of what Chris said, the fact that it hasn't been around for so long. But for me, you know, over the summer, like I said, when we saw, you know, Big Cat from Barstool playing and getting 50,000 people, think about the scale of that. That's more than literally the people go to like a lot of college football actual games. And he had that playing a, you know, 7-year-old game. That shows you that there is interest, and maybe it just speaks to the power of Barstool and the media behemoth that they have. But I do think there's demand for this game, and it's going to be interesting. We'll see. I mean, it doesn't come out for a couple of years, so maybe this whole sports as esports thing will have gotten a little bit will have changed, because I think you guys are right. Right now, they don't do as well, clearly.
Chris giving you a great opportunity, a great plug here.
Exactly.
He says, because there was betting on it, buy.gg, my friend. Yes.
That's right. Thank you.
If you do want to bet on esports, buy.gg is where you should be going. All right, let's wrap this up, guys. I want to do our segment very quickly. What are we playing this week? Jeff, since you talked about college football esports, you must be playing something, right? Your kid's now what, like 2 weeks old? Like you're back to normal, right?
2.5 weeks.
Okay.
No, I didn't play anything. I did. No. I got time this today.
I feel like you just can't get away with it, right? Like you could never just be lying on the couch like with your Nintendo Switch. Like
it's not worth even trying to play games right now. My wife will like stick a knife in me. Yeah.
Lindsay, what did you play this week?
I played Chill Panda.
Chill Panda?
Yeah. It was exactly as described. Okay, so I was
ready. Did it live up to the expectations? I thought you were playing some sequel. No, that was Victoria playing the sequel,
Victoria,
right?
But there was no original.
No, I was like prepared. Okay, it was actually really fun. And there's like Pogo, which is panda yoga that you do, and you can color pictures, and it's all these things. But anyways, the thing that was actually really helpful is it's a really relaxed way. I'm really bad at things like controlling a camera and pulling up a map and all this stuff. It was such a relaxed way to practice those things, like actual game mechanics, but like in a completely no stakes, like you're just a little panda running around kind of thing. So it actually like, I was like, oh, I'm actually learning stuff. Like this is how you use a camera.
So please tell me you've bought the one first party Nintendo title since you got your Switch.
Oh yeah, we have Zelda, we have Mario Kart, we have
I was worried. I was a little worried that Chill Panda was the only download.
I've been more on the panda part. It's been like, actually, I was, like I said, totally prepared to make fun of it. And there's plenty to make fun of because it's just this silly little game, but it was actually so helpful. Also, I got a dog, so that's been taking up like all of my other playtime.
That's not an esport. We don't discuss
I know, but you said, what are you playing? I'm playing with my dog.
Do I get to go?
I thought you were going to say you bought Dogecoin, and that would have been really cool.
I want to hear about
a real dog, much less so. Dogecoin, that would have been interesting.
I have been playing a lot of Valorant, and it's fantastic. I really like it. It's matured a ton. I'm super into it. Like, I don't know. It's a shooter I really enjoy. So, big recommendation to the viewers. If you played it at launch and you stepped away like me, go back now. The game has really matured a lot. It's the small things, but they really matter. And I'm a big fan, actually.
William, the question is, A, when are we playing together? And B, have you got a kill yet?
We can talk after the podcast, and the goal is not always to kill people, even in a shooter, Paul.
True. So you're a lover, not a fighter.
I'm learning the maps right now. That's how I describe it. I'm getting the sight lines, and the kills come later after the mastery.
Victoria, you have a fan here. Martin says he played a little Daddish too. Not for me, but I see the appeal. Did you play more Daddish too? Is that it?
Things are getting pretty serious between me and Daddish too. It's my kind of game. What can I say? I'm pretty stuck on a level though, so if I can't get past it, I'm pretty impatient. So it's going to be on to the next. Interesting, you guys brought up Valorant. I've actually been watching a lot of Valorant on Twitch, and I've been thinking about getting onto Valorant. So maybe
Here's
we'll
the
have a
question,
little
though,
tournament.
Victoria. Do you find it entertaining to watch? Like, do you understand the game? Because I
Yeah.
guess you haven't played it yet,
Well,
right?
No, I haven't played it yet.
Meaning,
but
did you find it easy to pick up not being a player? I'm always curious.
Yeah.
And it was entertaining to watch, even though
It was
you don't play.
entertaining to watch. Yeah.
You know, I think there's another whole conversation which we won't have right now around these types. And William, you and I have had this conversation, right? Like the drama that CS, Counter-Strike style games creates makes it sort of a really great viewing experience. But interesting that you thought it was relatively easy to pick up. So you should try Valorant. We got a 3-stack right here already. We just got to get, Jeff and Lindsay into real games, and we'll be good.
Kill Panda is real enough.
Chris says, "Pause, play Oni and the Will of the Wisps."
I am stupid excited to play that. I'm pumped. Yeah. It's on my list. Don't worry.
I saw it speedrun at the last Games Done Quick, and it was actually very interesting to watch those guys speedrun those games. Martin says, "Hell yes, William. Valorant is going strong. Running headshots are gone," says Chris. Are they? Is the patch out where they are gone? Because I wasn't sure. And the Real Nylon says, "I'm with you on that one, William. The most recent patch has really made the game amazing." Chris says, "Rip Overwatch." I will say, I sometimes forget to do this segment myself. I played Valorant for the last 2 weeks, pretty much. And I will say, where I was a big doubter of the game in the beginning, it has started to grow on me. I think they've made some key fixes, some key balance changes, and I'm playing it at a pretty high level right now. And I think the game's got legs. Look, it's Counter-Strike, right? And I love Counter-Strike. But I've been enjoying it. I'm seeing a lot of chat in the background here. Martin says, "Look at Paul changes tune." Martin, I gave the game a second chance because I knew we were having the guy from Riot on. I wanted to be, well versed in talking about it. Chris, not Silver. No, come on. You think I'm William here?
Don't compliment me, Paul. Stop complimenting me.
Well, just some of there's a bit of chatter in the background. First of all, Lindsay would like to announce what kind of dog she got.
I would. I mean, I did get a Rottweiler. She's very cute.
That is the important announcement. That's the only thing I'm seeing here in the comments.
I can vouch for the cuteness of her dog.
There's other big announcements, and Paul doesn't want to ruin them yet.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin them yet, but of course they're all other big announcements, which we can't ruin yet.
Can we at least do a giveaway? Giveaway.
Are you financing the giveaway, Jeff?
I'll finance the giveaway. What's the cheapest thing in your store?
I think. How about this? Because I can't just, unless we just do a giveaway with whoever here's now. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Or do we give them a week to sign up or something?
Whatever you think. What do you think, Victoria?
Let's do it.
Let's do it now.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. If you want to be in the giveaway, just put something in the chat. Type giveaway in the chat.
Yeah, put socks in the chat.
Put socks in the chat. There you go.
You got a 50-50 chance currently.
Martin's got to be in here. I think the LinkedIn comments are delayed.
No, Martin had to go.
Can you guys hear my dog snoring in the background? I just realized he is literally snoring so loud in the back.
Here's what I recommend, because we're at the very end of the podcast. I would rather have people sign up. I'll put something out on social, okay? We'll have people sign up, and we will do, you guys will hold me to it, like in the middle of next week's live stream. Oh, there we go. All the LinkedIn comments.
Yeah. Martin, Chris, I'm rooting for you guys.
All right. Okay, fine. We have enough then. Fine. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not promising socks, just FYI, but we will We will give. Okay, hold on. I'm going to put this in a random generator here. All right. We're going to do this on the fly. All right,
So
everyone, last chance to get in on the Jeff giveaway. Okay, we ready? We're gonna roll this, and the winner is Francois wins the socks.
Wow.
There you go.
So it is
Francois,
socks.
Congratulations. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Send me an address, or we will get you your winnings this week or next week. So just hit me up, send me your address, and we will go from there. Guys, thank you as always. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, William. You guys are awesome. I will say thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you're still here, you guys are the best. We appreciate it. Don't forget, we do this every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Stay tuned for the podcast tomorrow. Go check out, the Business of Esports minutes and the other content we put out. We will do more giveaways for merch, I promise. But go buy some merch because a lot of it's really cool. I will tease that we are probably going to do mouse pads very soon. So there's that coming, like proper gaming mouse pads with cool Business of Esports designs. But thank you to all of you. Thank you, Martin, Chris, Josh, Bodrick, Francois, Martin, Real Nylon, everyone who came, commented, participated. Greg, thank you. As always, we will see you guys next week.
On Friday, too.
And on Friday on Clubhouse.